Donald Trump thinks that he's being treated worse than Abraham Lincoln. Worse than Abraham Lincoln. So Donald Trump goes to the Lincoln Memorial. He does an interview in front of it because, as one knows, the way to be president of the United States is not to actually be competent and know how to handle a pandemic. It's actually to just get video taken of you near presidential type things. Like if you, get a video or a picture of yourself near the Lincoln Memorial, that is being presidential. That's all you have to do. Who knew the job was that easy? But anyway, he complains that he is treated worse than Lincoln. It's something he said repeatedly. And that got me to thinking about a book, of course, because it's what to read, R-E-I-D, but it's what to read. And so we think about books around here. As I was thinking about a book called The Impeachers. Here it is. It's by Brenda Wineapple. The subhead of the book is The Trial of Andrew Johnson and the Dream of a Just Nation. And while the book is about Andrew Johnson, who to me is the president who's the most like Donald Trump in every way, his attitude, his crazy rallies, his attitude toward non-white people, all of that is very Trumpy. But it got me to thinking about this because Lincoln, who is revered as, one of the great presidents, he's always in the top 3, top 4 of American presidents whenever historians rank him. But Lincoln did do one really stupid thing, and that is pick Andrew Johnson to be his vice president. And it was a choice that he did not have to make. He made this decision for no other reason than politics. And it's interesting that I'm thinking about this at the time when Joe Biden is trying to figure out who he should pick as his VP. It's a very important choice. It's a choice that doesn't really matter until it matters, right? You pick Andrew Johnson and then go to the theater. Oh, no. That's not smart. Because then you end up with Andrew Johnson as president. So you got to pick somebody who, if something happens to you, you actually want them to be president. Andrew Johnson, bad choice. Not somebody you want to be president. In the very beginning, Abraham Lincoln actually had a good vice president named Hannibal Hamlin from Maine. I don't think he was from Bangor, Maine, but at some point he lived in Bangor, Maine. He was a United States senator from Maine, and he was what you call a radical Republican. Now, currently, radical Republican means, you're like Mitch McConnell and you think that poor people should not have food, because they don't deserve it. Back then, radical Republican meant they were really super duper against slavery. I mean, Lincoln was a Republican, right? He was, at the very beginning of the Republican Party, he was against slavery, but he wasn't like a radical Republican. Radical Republicans were like Hannibal Hamlin of Maine, who believed, in arming enslaved people. He believed they should be armed and be allowed to fight in the Civil War. He believed in complete racial equality. Including voting equality. There was a civil rights bill that ultimately gets floated by the radical Republicans in 1865, which of course is vetoed by Andrew Johnson because he was anti-black people. He was very much like Donald Trump in every way. He didn't really like the non-whites. But anyway, this is how radical Hannibal Hamlin was as a radical Republican. Lincoln at one point puts forward the idea that black people at least in the district in Washington, D.C. should be shipped back to Africa. And Hannibal was like, no, he blocked it. Like he was really a radical Republican. So he was the vice president to Lincoln. And when Lincoln runs for re-election, he decides that he needs geographic balance. So he dumps Hannibal Hamlin of Maine and picks up Andrew Johnson because Andrew Johnson was the rare Southern senator who was for the Union staying together. He was a pro-Union Southerner from Tennessee, and so he picks him instead. Out goes Hannibal Hamlin, in comes Andrew Johnson, and then Lincoln goes, you know what I think I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the theater. Not very smart. The Impeachers. Brenda Wineapple. You want to check this book out. It's a really good book. Well, today, speaking of really good books, we have the author, one of my favorite authors, one of my favorite people in the world is coming up, and her name is Karine Jean Pierre. We're going to talk about her book, which is called Moving Forward. Okay, let's bring in Karine. And joining me now is a face and a name that you all will know. You know her, you love her, you adore her. Karine Jean Pierre is here.
Oh,
hey, lady.
Hi, Joy. So good to hear your voice.
I know.
Oh, my goodness.
It's wild because I'm so used to being able to see you on a regular basis, whether in person or on the little screen while we're on TV together. This whole corona hiding thing is weird because now Zoom is the only way we see anybody. And you have a baby. So I've got to ask you before I jump into the book, how are you dealing with all y'all being home with a child? And how are you guys dealing with that?
So we are managing, to be quite honest with you. Look, it is tough. It is homeschooling and full-time work.
Yeah.
And I've always appreciated teachers, always respected them, appreciated them. I respect them more today and every day since
Yeah.
COVID-19, the shelter in place, and until it's all over. I mean, I do not understand how they do what they do. We have a 5-year-old, and so she does Zoom class
Yeah.
every morning for an hour and a half. So, because they're little brains, they can't really focus all that much. And it's like you're sitting next to her and you're watching, and it's like 20 kids like, hey, I have something to say, I have something to share. And I'm like, oh, please, Miss Johnson, mute. Use the mute button. Use the mute button. So it is insane. And because she's still little, there's a lot more work. There's a lot more work for parents. She's not like 10 or 12 where we could just put her in front of the computer and she gets it and she understands technology. Like, we have to understand the technology. We have to understand where to find everything. One thing, Joy, that I always have thought about is in this last couple of weeks is if English is not your first language and you do not know technology, or you do not have access to technology or broadband, I don't know how you're able to help your kid.
Yeah.
And I feel like some of these kids are going to be, left behind during this crisis. And that I have like this diatribe every day about the technology, and I don't get it, in a sense of like, how are people who are not tech savvy like us are getting by for the kids?
Well, one of the things that, this crisis has, I think, highlighted some of the challenges that already existed in this country. And one of them, I've heard people say that access to broadband is one of the new civil rights. And now we're finding out why that's true, right? Because when you have to shelter at home, if you don't have access to broadband and you don't have access to get out, to even log on to Zoom, or you don't have a laptop or an iPad or a cell phone, how do you educate your kids? It's going to be really difficult. So the things I think that we're going to have to rethink, let's just say there's another administration next year, maybe. There's going to be a big plate, a lot of stuff on the plate.
Yeah, because there's a new normal, right? This is the new normal for a while, until there's a vaccine, until we could really, really, be in each other's company without having to be 6 feet apart, whatever it is. And so for schools, this is it. This is going to be it for a while.
Yeah.
There might be some iteration of things that they'll come up with for the fall, but for the time being, and broadband. If you don't have broadband, if you don't have just any type of technology that's easily accessible to you, what does that mean? And that's usually poor people, right? That's usually Black and brown people. That's usually just because of just how the system is just set up for us to fail, to be quite honest.
Unfortunately. Well, which brings me to, this is what you call a hard turn. We're going to go to something positive. I want to talk about your book. Well, actually, no, it's not that hard of a turn, because I read this book when I first got it. I literally sat down and read it. And normally I'm a very slow reader, but I read this book actually pretty quickly, because you really do not want to put it down. Not just because I love you and am fascinated by reading your own history and your story, but the book actually made me feel better, right? Because it's giving you, it's giving the reader like a plan, right? It kind of makes you feel like this is how you can get through. And this was actually before COVID, right? This era is so painful, I think, for people, that this is the kind of book that I think people need. So I want to give you a chance to talk about what inspired you to write the book, and give us the log line for those who have not been lucky enough to read it yet.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm so excited to be on What to Read. Yes. Oh, yes. What to read. Well, this is what to read right here, my book. Gosh, wow. So the book came out in November of 2019. And the essence of the book, when I first wrote the book, it was supposed to be about, what it means to be a progressive, why it's so important to get involved, and here are the steps to get involved. And of course, once you put your story into it, once I put my story into it, it became incredibly personal. So it became all of the adversities that I had to overcome, but I did. I got to the other side of it. And so that's the hope that you see. That's the hopefulness of the book. Is like I share some really deep things that happened to me as I was growing up, and all the adversities as I mentioned, and how I got over it. And then it talks about my career and how I got into politics, and to all the the young people or not so young people who are figuring out either they want to get into politics or they
Mm-hmm.
want to just be involved in some way.
Yeah.
Here's the way to do it. Here's some advice that I give. And as you know, Joy, I teach at Columbia.
Yep.
I teach graduate school campaign management, and I used to always get that question: how did you get to where you got to?
Yeah.
How did you get to the White House? And so I just put it all in this book, and just told my truth, was very, very honest about it. And at the same time, like you just said, I want it to be hopeful.
Yeah. And there are painful stories in here. There's difficult things that happen to you. I of course, I don't know if it's like kismet or it's karma. I opened the book, and you know what page I got to? Barack Obama. Because a lot of people, they know you for obviously having worked on that campaign, and of course the last like real president that we had that was really smart and really great. But long before you got to be the person that worked on the campaign and also worked in the Obama White House, tell me about your immigrant story, because I think it's really important to hear the stories of your parents. Your parents were immigrants, are immigrants, and their story I think is really important for people to understand. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think like many other immigrant stories, I am who I am, right? You are the person that you are because of the culture and because of where you came from and because the story of your parents or the people who came before your parents, right? Your grandparents and so on. And so their story is my story. Their story, I am the person that I am today because of my parents' experience, what they went through. They are both Haitian. They born and raised in Haiti, did not grow up with a lot of means. I tell my mom's stories. There's a chapter 3, that's really about my mom and telling her story about she was orphaned at a very young age and had to go through all of her ups and downs. And I talk about how she lost her first child. I mean, it's a very deep story, but the person that she is made me the person that I am today. And I think you hear that over and over. It really, I tried to thread that needle. And so when they left Haiti, like many other immigrants across the globe, they wanted a better life for themselves, but for their children. I wasn't born in Haiti. I actually was born in Martinique. And then my 2 siblings who are younger than me, they were born in the States. And so it's that story. It's that story of like, how do I have a better life for myself, for my children? And they heard about the American dream, right? Oh wow, if you go to America, you have all these opportunities.
Yep.
And of course, when we get to America, it's a different set of opportunities for everyone else. And and my dad, when he got to the States, he was a New York City cab driver. He was one for decades. My mom, a home health care aide in New York, and they've worked 6-7 days a week. 15 hours days. It was, just to survive. I mean, that's the amount of work that they put in just to survive, not to become a millionaire or a multimillionaire, just to survive and make it and put food on the table. And so that is what I saw growing up in and out, day in, day out, of how hard it is just to survive. Even though there were more opportunities in this country, in the USA, it is still incredibly difficult for people of color, for immigrants, you name it, for women. I mean, it is just hurdles upon hurdles upon hurdles. And if you're poor, that's a whole other layer. Yeah. And so that's the story that I wanted to tell, especially the last 3 years when you have a president, Donald Trump, who is just stepping over everybody's hopes and dreams and doesn't care about brown and black people, doesn't care about immigrants, doesn't care about anyone who isn't him.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to tell that story as well, that immigrant story, that all important story that makes this country what it is in many, many ways, besides, stealing Africans and bringing them here.
There's that little thing. But I love, first of all, your mom is awesome, by the way. For those of you who have not met or seen Miss Karine's mom, she is fabulous. Okay, she will dress, honey. But I love the fact, in this era, in this era where home, she was a home healthcare aide, as you said, where healthcare workers and the healthcare front lines are so much in our minds and in our hearts right now. That's just something that people forget, is that a lot of that community are immigrant women of color. Like, I mean, my aunt was a nurse. We all have so many family members in these communities that come to this country, and one of the jobs that you can get into the middle class is nursing. It's a thing that people get into, and so there are a lot of Black immigrants in that profession who are now on the front lines of dealing with COVID.
That's exactly right. First of all, my just so everybody who's listening, my mom loves Joanne Reid. She asks me all the time, "Where is my joy? How is my joy doing?" And she's like, "When am I going to see my joy?" She literally she asks me.
She's
that.
Awesome. I love her.
just to let you know, she would be upset if I did not relay that message. Yeah, look. COVID-19, many things that COVID-19 has done, it has revealed an ugly truth, right? Which we as a community had known already. When you think about the racial disparity in healthcare and in so many other ways, right? We knew that existed, and now the ugly truth has presented itself. And another way is that when we talk about essential workers, whether it is service workers, whether it is, as you just mentioned, healthcare workers, people on the front lines, majority of them are people of color, Black people, immigrants that we are talking about, like the people in your family and my family. And nursing has always been, for many immigrants, a way to step into the middle class, as you just stated. Mm-hmm. And whether it is a home health care aide, an LPN, RN, all of those things is a way to step into a place of where you can have more wealth, more access. But at the same time, these are the folks who are on the front lines who are very much affected by COVID-19 and dying, unfortunately.
Yeah. And exactly. And the thing that's so galling is to watch an administration fumble around and a president not express empathy. And the number of people who have died as of the day that we're taping today is so astronomical. It's hard for me to even get my mind around it, and I can't imagine being a nurse right now and dealing with this level of mass death. I just honestly, these are the strongest people, the best people in the world, honestly. Big ups to all the nurses and healthcare workers, because I couldn't deal with it. I want to talk a little bit about politics, because another thing that you and I share in common, we have a lot in common in terms of having worked a little bit in politics, although I will, caveat it. I was at the lowest possible level in the Obama campaign, okay? Like the bottom. And Karine was like up here. She was serious, okay? She was a very VIP inside that campaign and was an amazing person. And who I did not know at the time. But you've also know what it's like to work on a campaign that did not win. Right. And I think for a lot of people, particularly like Bernie Sanders supporters that are still really angry about the way things came out, losing is not easy. You worked in the John Edwards campaign world as well. So can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what do you say to young people who want to get into politics? How do you handle losing? And what can you take from it that you can grow from? And how do you then resign yourself to maybe combine with or bind with the campaign that beat you?
Yeah, it's hard. It is tough. And I think what's happening in this moment, and it's so funny because 2016 was a very ugly campaign and 2008 was a very, very ugly campaign. But 2020, we're kind of in that same space. Yep. Where it's I think the added partisanship, the added it's just really ugly and nasty. And you have the internet, right? You have Twitter, you have Facebook, you have all of these things that exacerbates all of the kind of vitriolic language that you hear, which is hurtful, which is, does not help what we're trying to do, especially if you are in the Democratic Party. Yeah. So for me, and I talk about this in my book, I talk about how, I just was always focused on the goal. I was focused on the goal, like, I want to work in the White House. Like, I want to work on a presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. I want to succeed. I want to, even though I was on a campaign that lost, I ended up jumping on the Obama campaign. And a lot of it was, I wanted to be part of history.
Yep.
I had developed really good relationships with other people from the other campaigns.
Mm-hmm.
And even though it was, we still had a relationship. And I say this to all the folks happening that are this vitriolic kind of nature that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We can't let Donald Trump get reelected.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
We have to let this go. We cannot let this happen. Another 4 years. Just think about it. Another 4 years of Donald Trump and what that means
Mm-hmm.
for people that we were just talking about, brown people, black people, immigrants. It will be detrimental to us.
Yes.
And you gotta let that go. You have to let that go. We gotta vote. We gotta vote. We gotta still ask for what we want, right?
Yeah.
We still have to, the community, of black community, still ask for what we want and what we deserve and what we should have had
Yes.
decades ago. So be loud and clear and ask for things, but we have to go out and vote at the same time, because we just can't. Before you would just talk about COVID-19 and the reaction of this administration. Look, I've been on your show many times, and I'm grateful to have that platform. We talked about how unfit he was.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how he was not ready to be president.
Mm-hmm.
And he shows us that. And in this crisis, in its most deadliest crisis that we've had to date under his presidency, this is where we see it in a way that is just striking.
Yeah.
Right. The fact that the response is terrible right now. The preparedness is just unbelievable. He just ignored it, ignored the intelligence community, ignored, the Secretary of HHS, ignored the experts, and didn't care about people's lives. And so this is where we are. We cannot afford this. We cannot afford this as a community.
Yep.
We cannot afford it as a country. We just cannot at all. Get your stuff together and get your thinking right, because we have to win.
Absolutely. I'm going to read a little. I searched around for it. I don't know if you could see me quietly searching for it as I was listening to you, but I found it. I found the little section that I want to read, and this applies, I think, really well. This is from the book Moving Forward, because it's what to read. We're going to read just a tiny bit. I'm going to read a little bit of you to you. And you wrote, most of all, I am fighting for, you mentioned your beautiful daughter Soleil, to have her best chance in life, a real opportunity to grow up in a gun-free environment, a real opportunity to get a good college education that won't bankrupt her or us, a real opportunity to live a healthy, happy life without being impacted by racism or sexism, a real opportunity to fulfill her unique promise in this world, a real opportunity to live in a world that is not being dominated by climate breakdowns or choked to death by pollution or poisoned by toxins like mercury and lead. That is a thing to fight for. You write about the why of why we have to move forward and why we have to not give up and keep fighting. How do you stay positive and keep from despair, quite honestly? You pay attention to politics as much as I do because we be texting, so I know you do. And you're taking a lot in that's so negative. How do you keep the will to keep fighting for these things? And obviously your daughter is a huge inspiration to do that. But what's the how of how you do that?
The how is like how I stay hopeful. I think you named one of them, which is a really, really important one, is my daughter Soleil, who's 5 years old. And I watch her every day, and I take it all in because of they say kids are resilient, and they really are. I mean, she finds happiness and joy in everything. And the innocence is it's just so mind-boggling how innocent she is and should be. I mean, she's 5. Yeah. And so that really matters to me, because then I think about, okay, she's 5. She's going to be 6 this year. Then she'll be 10. Then she'll be 15. Like, you think about these moments in her life and what this country will be like. And so I think about that too. And I also think about when she is 15 or 12 years old and she looks back and she's learning about this time, this history, this moment in time, the Trump administration. And if she asks me, well, Mama, what did you do during this time? Yeah. What were you doing? I want to tell her, like, I fought. I worked for this organization. I was regularly on TV. I was regularly trying to bring a voice to people who felt like they didn't have a voice, that I was fighting. I want her to know that I fought during this moment. And so that's actually a really big part of my inspiration and hope for what's ahead. And and I also think about other people. And I think you have this experience too, because you have such a bigger platform than I do, which is you meet people on the road, and not anymore now because we're in this crisis, but you meet people on the road or on a flight or on a train or wherever you are at an event, and they thank you. And they say, thank you so much for speaking up. Thank you so much for, for giving us a voice. And they tell you their stories. And that makes me feel like, okay, people are listening and they feel like they have, I'm saying what they want to hear. And so that is inspirational and hopeful as well. And, I just think about all of the bad stuff that's happened. And I use it as an inspiration as to like, we can't let that bad stuff stick and be what we are. Like, we have to fight for people. Like, I'm just somebody, when I see people who are affected, like, I just want to go into fighting mode. It is an automatic place that I need to be. You think about the babies on the, who were caged, and many died at the southern border, because of a nasty, ugly policy. And I think, well, how can we let that be? And It's still happening today. But there's so much stuff. I don't know. And I think also just being in politics, I think when you work on campaigns, when you're an activist, and when you're given a platform, you know that platform is so important. You know that platform is given to you and entrusted to you. So you have to, I just feel like for me, I have to use it to my best abilities.
Karine Jean-Pierre is her name. And when she says she goes into fighting mode, she's not kidding, because she jumped up in a booty pop dress one time when people tried to come at Kamala Harris, and she was just like whipping ass like she was in Wakanda. I think she might be a Wakanda warrior on this side. She will fight you in a booty pop dress and heels. Don't play with her. It is moving forward, a story of hope, hard work, and the promise of America. If you read the book, because this is what to read, so the job is to get the book and read the book, so order it and read it. You will even get a list of people you can follow on Twitter. I have people ask me this all the time. Give me a set of follows, people I can follow on Twitter, a starter kit, as it were, so that I know who to follow to get good information. She gives you that in the book. This is why we read. Karine Jean-Pierre, I love you, girl. I appreciate you.
I love you too, Joy.
Oh, it's so great.
I love you too.
Jason gets a shout out. Look at that. See, look at God. Look at God. Won't he do it? Jason even gets a shout out here on What to Read. Karine Jean-Pierre, love you, girl. And the daughter is 5 going on CEO. So don't even play with her either, because she'll probably beat you behind too. Baby Wakanda warrior. Don't mess with her either. Okay, the whole family will come for you. So don't come for them if they ain't called you. All right, I want to thank my friend Karine Jean-Pierre for being here today. The book is Moving Forward, a story of hope, hard work, and the promise of America. Great book. It will inspire you. It will move you, make you laugh, make you cry, and it will give you some hope. And it'll give you some follows on Twitter that you can follow. That's very useful. And the picture's cute, too. So you want to order that from everywhere that you order books. Support some of these great Black-owned bookshops. S01 Books is a great one. Mahogany Books is a great one. Uncle Bobby's. Don't forget Uncle Bobby's in Philadelphia, or wherever you love to buy books. Buy a book and support an author. Very important to do. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the buttons below. Give us a like. Of course, subscribe to the One Mic Network. Throw some comments underneath. Tell us what you loved. Give us a book that you would like me to review and an author you'd like me to interview. You can, of course, also get this podcast in the old audio variety by downloading it wherever you download your podcast. Thanks very much, and we'll see you guys soon. Bye.